Welcome. Here we go. I think we're live. Yeah. So, uh, sorry about that. So, welcome everyone. I'm Jared. I'm one of the team members of Podcast Movement. And today we're very fortunate to have my friend, Christina Barsi. She is with Avant House Media. And today she's talking about the secret to podcasting success. I love secrets. So, Christina, I can't wait to hear what you have in store for us today. With that being said, I'm sure there's going to be some people that are not as familiar with you and what you're up to. So maybe you could just start out by just giving a little bit of a brief intro, and then we can go into the presentation from there.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Barsi. People call me Barsi. And like Jared said, thank you for that introduction. I'm the founder of Avant House Media. It is a podcast production consulting management company. We do anything and everything you might need to start a podcast, or if you're even thinking of starting a podcast, we do a lot of development in the front end, and then we kind of stay with you through your journey. I also have a show called People Begin. That's my podcast. I'm the host of that. And that is something that we offer tools and techniques and ways to get out of your own way to kind of begin, get to the thing that you're hoping to do. So that's my specialty. I have a little bit more about myself in the slides, which we'll just go over briefly since I already introduced myself mostly. But I'm going to go over to my share if we can do that. Let's see. And hopefully this is going to look the way it's supposed to. We're going to go to a full screen here. So can everyone, I wish there was a way for me to check if people can see me or see this presentation. So hopefully it's working. Jared, people on the sidelines, please let me know if it's not working. Okay, so the realistic secret to success revealed. That's what we're talking about today. I did want to start with you. So while we're going through this, I would like you to think about a couple of times in your life, maybe it's now, maybe it's before, where you felt successful in something. Maybe it's podcast related, maybe it's not. It's up to you. But just think of an area in your life where you felt really successful, or just something that you maybe did. And then maybe a few things that you didn't feel successful in or don't at the moment. Or again, this could be podcast related because we are talking about podcasting, but it doesn't have to be. And that might be the reason you're here, to kind of figure out how you can bring more of that into your life or into the things that you're doing. And then I want you to consider, what are the goals? What are your goals for this session? You came here for a reason, and I want to make sure we're serving that for you. So we're going to go through some things, but when we get to Q&A, this will help you really know what you came for, so that if you didn't hear it or see it during the session, you can formulate a question that really serves you, because that's what we're here for. All right. So I kind of went over this already. So this is my Instagram. This is my email address. I just want to show this to you in case you want to take a screenshot and connect with me later. And I want to share this with you as well, my values and my mission, because this is kind of the perspective we'll be speaking from. These are things to know about me, so you have an idea of how we're going to be talking throughout this next hour. I like to help people get out of their own way. Excuse me. I'm going to take a quick drink of water because I'm not used to talking for an hour anymore. It's the reality of virtual. All right. So I like to help people get out of their own way. I like to create tools and platforms that lower barriers. And I like to leverage creativity for growth. So these are all the things that my company stands for, my podcast does. And I want you to, I say this because I want you to think about what they are for you. My mission is to empower individuals creatively to be heard and actualize their dreams and potential. Again, I invite you to think about what your mission might be. A really simpler one for myself is I like to inspire and be inspired. So that's a great simple format to mimic, meaning what do you love to have and how do you like to give? It's a great way to think about missions. And all of this kind of factors into your creation process when you're building something. So I promise to you today to reveal the secret to success. I know that's a big ask, but we're gonna go through some processes. And the way we're gonna go through this is we're gonna learn how to feel from a perspective of success. And I'm intentional about my words here. So the way I'm saying this is important to how we're going to walk through this. Why it's important, how to do it sustainably. So meaning repeatably, how you can repeat creating opportunities of success for you. That's a sustainable process, right? And then what success really is. So what is it? What does that even mean? So let's get started. Of course, I'm going to frame this in podcast terms because we are in a podcast community. And first, I'm going to start with a story because we all love stories, right? Because we're podcasters. So 2 clients, client number 1, client number 2. These are the things they have in common. They started at the same time. They began with similar resources and influence, meaning they spent the same amount of money to go through this process. They had the same amount of resources. So we employ those resources in similar ways, meaning at the time we went to studios to record their sessions and things like that. And influence, meaning they didn't have a developed niche yet in the area they would have liked to, which is why we were starting podcasts for both of these clients. And we went through the same process because I was giving them the same process. So they showed up, we started around the same time. It took about the same amount of time. They were in very similar places when they began. Client number 1 had a very niche topic, so super niche and small community, but very dedicated community, which is great for podcasting, right? For various reasons. One of them being brands really understand how to work with you if they see your niche and they see their audience being served by you. So that's one reason why we like niches, but there are more. Great guests from their community. They found a way to really curate an amazing guest list for their first season. And we'll talk about what seasons are when I say seasons in a moment, but it's going to make sense soon. So numbers out the gate at launch for them as well were above average. So most people, when they launch, the people that are showing up for their show to listen are the people that already love you. So your most inner community, sometimes one degree further out, depending on how present you are with your community and how you engage. But they did a good job at going past that a little bit. And those numbers can fall for most of us between 15 to 20 to 100. But that's usually our inner circle of people that just show up for anything that we do. And they did a little better in that area, which is unusual. And I do think it's because of their hyper niche topic. Client number 2 had a broader topic, and they also had a really great guest list. So they didn't have the advantages of super, super niche, but they did have a star-studded guest list as well. And the numbers were average out the gate, kind of how I just described them for how they happen for most of us. And then they exponentially grow based on things we do to help grow our show. And the things that they experienced the way they experienced success during their process. How did they each experience and measure this? So this is where they start to really differ. Client number 1 really had a lot of trouble connecting to trusting the process and trusting their moments of success. So I usually share with my clients their process, especially in the beginning, really specifically what their analytics are, what they mean, when to look at them, because we don't want to obsess over them every single day either, how to compare this to that, and how much time we should spend doing a thing so that it makes some sense, so that we can see a trend. So trouble connecting, trouble trusting that all the things I just outlined, like their show having bigger numbers and things like that, they didn't believe that was good. They didn't believe that those numbers were worth what I thought they were worth. They had trouble connecting to the process as a result, and they kept getting stuck at this question: is this working or worth it? And I will share that our first intro conversation when they were thinking about starting a podcast, the whole conversation was kind of in this: I don't know if this is going to work or if this is worth it, but I want to try it. So we did it. And they kind of always got stuck at that question. So they weren't able to see or feel the successes that were occurring compared to what I would see with others. And they just couldn't digest them or buy into it. So instead, they were stuck in this sort of, I don't know if this is working world. Client number 2 made a lot of space for success. Successful moments, they connected to their value and vision really strongly. They really knew why they were doing this. And so they believed in it from a different perspective. And when we would experience things that were going really well, they were overwhelmed with gratitude and really bought into the process as a result, which I have to say, and we're going to get into this more too, when you can see success for what it is, or moments that are going well, we'll call it for now, you have a better understanding and realistic sense of what isn't going well also, because you're looking at things from a very realistic place and you're not convoluting it too much with, imposter syndrome, fears, and things like that. So we'll talk about how that gets in the way. We created goals for both of my clients, but they participated in assessing these goals with me, where client number 1 had struggled with that. And they also saw their own successes along the way that we didn't predict. So they were looking for them, which is fantastic. And that allowed them to really trust the process and keep moving forward. So moving forward is a big goal in the beginning and in general, but in the beginning, it's really important to move forward because it's something new. So you have to find a system so that you can actually decide whether it's for you or not. But you have to put action to it and try it in order to find out. All right. So who do you think is currently having more measurable success right now? Because these are both still my clients. I still have both of them in my system, in my process, and I'm in process with them. So client 1 or client 2? If you guessed client number 2, you are correct. And they are doing really well. They now have over 1 million downloads. They've created, we just finished season 10. So we're into season 11 now. And they have bonus seasons between every season. So really, we've created like 15 seasons or something like that. And they are now seeing their original why and umbrella goals, which we'll define what those are in just a moment. Those are being met now, meaning the reason they started, the things they were hoping to achieve by having a podcast are all happening right now. And it's really, really rewarding to see. So they stuck with it. And now they're seeing the outcomes of the type of success they were hoping would be the bigger successes from having a podcast. Client number 1, like I said, they're still in the game, but their numbers have dropped a little bit. And the reason that is probably because they stop and start. They stop and start. They have about 6 seasons now, and they have trouble buying in to starting again because they are stuck at that question. Is it worth it? And is it working? So they're struggling to meet their original goals because they're kind of chasing outcomes rather than purpose. And we'll talk about what that means over here. So the bonus why it's important to differentiate outcomes versus the value you want to create. An outcome, which happens often, people decide they want a podcast because they would like to make money, but money is an outcome and you start with the value. If you're starting with the outcome first, you're kind of putting the cart before the horse, right? So yes, you can make money, but you have to create something of value first in order to garner that reward, that outcome. And people get a little lost in their purpose when they don't create a path that is and a starting point that's really, really embedded in their reason for starting and the value they'd like to give and receive. So we want to create long-term success. And to do that, it's important to be connected to the process. It's important to know how you are going to measure success for you, not how other people are doing it, but what matters for you in the stage you're in. And it's important to define what success is for you. So important to know how you're going to measure it. It's also important to know what it means when it comes around. You know, if you don't identify a successful moment, then it comes and goes and it's like it never happened. So that's really important as well. So what happens when we don't factor in success to our process? Now, I talked about this or touched on it a little bit, and that's when imposter syndrome shows up and fear takes over, comparison starts to creep in, and things like that. So we start to lose sight of the value that we're offering. We might change things hastily because we think that they're not working, but we're not giving it enough time to be tested. That's very common when we look at comparison, when we look at someone else and go, oh, well, they're doing this. I'm going to try that because that's working for them. But you've only tested what's working for you for a very short amount of time, let's say, and then switching it up doesn't necessarily change your probability for success. And again, like, what does that mean? Bigger numbers, whatever. So we want to not allow ourselves to fall into comparison and imposter syndrome or give in to our fears. Those things are going to show up. That's normal. That's part of being a human being. They're part of the brain makeup. Everybody has the ability to have this happen at any stage. And the difference, though, is allowing those things to be the loudest voice and control the situation, where you listen and then you create action based on the comparison and the imposter syndrome and the fears, or you allow space. Oh, I have a dog that just came into our door. Okay. Please hold. Thank you. The realities of not being on stage, which I guess maybe that could have happened in the real world too. Not that this isn't the real world. Okay, so measuring success. We're going to get right back on track. You don't want to let the comparison, the imposter syndrome get into the driver's seat, basically. You want to be able to know that it's happening and stick to your plan. That's what I'm trying to say. So it's going to happen. That's normal. Stick to your plan and everything will be fine. Sort of. You'll be better for it. So you get to decide what kind of experience you want to have. Now, when I say you get to decide, that means you get to be in control of the type of experience you feel and want to have. You get to design it, and the feelings you have are yours. You get to determine what that's like. So let's get into how to create a structure for this. How do we create a structure that promotes opportunities for success? We have to start with goals. And it's the first one I mentioned when I said umbrella goal. My client number 2 is really experiencing their umbrella goals now. And this is their reason for starting. It's the part that's connected to their why, the one that is for themselves, the one that really motivated them and inspired them to start this big journey of creation and podcasting. And it's the one that you're giving your listener. What kind of value are you giving them that becomes their why for showing up to listen? And then you also connect this to your how. Like, how are you going to add value? What does that actually look like? What's the plan of value add? Like, what things are you going to promise and talk about? Much like I'm promising to you this reveal of what success means, right? That's the value I'm promising you. And then you create an action plan to move this all forward consistently. So big goals. Your why, what inspired you? What's that connected to in your life? Is it something that you want to be a bigger voice in your niche? That's common, right? That's a good reason. Do you have a business and you want to show people that you care about certain core values and issues? Maybe it's, diversity, equity, inclusion oriented. Maybe it's needing people to understand what you're all about. And a podcast is such a great way to do that. That's why branded podcasts do so well. They're so intimate and they really show us who a brand is. So is it something like that? Or is it, something else? Is it a hobby? That's okay too. Is it just bringing you joy? And that's inspiring to do because you really need that as a self-care moment. And then what is the listener's why? What are you going to help them with? Is it something obvious, like I'm going to give them information on this topic consistently? Or is it, we're a comedy podcast. I'm going to make people laugh to take a break from their life. Again, maybe it's that self-care. Is it mindfulness? Is it meditation? Those are all self-care, things that are feelings that sometimes we don't think of as takeaways, but they are. So just some things to think about. And then you have your how. How will the project help your bigger picture? I'm kind of getting back to this again. It's all connected, but the bigger picture, what's the long game for you? Do you know what your bigger picture is? You don't have to know all of this right at the beginning. Sometimes you have to start to find out what they are, but I implore you to at least consider it and know that you can have a bigger picture and to identify what it is if you're able to, or to look for it on your path. So, and then how will it add value and how are you planning to do that? Action points. So that's all of the umbrella goal stuff, like the big stuff. Then we want to identify stages. So I promised you that I would talk about what I'm saying when I say seasons. When I'm starting with clients, and I still do this because it helps us for various reasons, but we do 10 episode seasons. So when I say seasons internally, that's what people know I'm talking about. It's 10 episodes that gives us, let's say we're releasing once a week, that gives us 10 weeks. And that gives us 2.5 months if we're releasing once a week of time that we can measure something within. That's our container of time, right? Which is a great way to look at it. And it gives us enough runway to work with the process of creation too. Like, do we like this format? We can tweak it. We can play with it. We can see if we like this. We can, it's enough to learn and up level in that period of time as well. So that's what I'm saying when I'm talking about seasons. So stages of the process. It's really good to know where you're at to help you with the imposter syndrome and the comparison, to really identify. I'm in pre-launch. Cool. Don't compare yourself with someone who's 2 years in. I'm launching right now. Cool. Just worry about that. If you're launching, I wouldn't worry about what anyone else is doing because it's overwhelming to try to figure out what other people have going on. Just focus on your plan. Year one, this is where comparison can really start to creep in because you're like, I've been doing this now, and now I'm going to start looking around because I figured some things out and I want to see what other people are doing. That's great. You can do that, but just be careful with comparing yourself against someone as if they're better than you are, or they're doing something that you're not doing, and then beat yourself up over it. We don't want to do that. Intermediate, over a year, and then ongoing. So these are really basic because podcasting can go on and on and on for years, but this is the best way to kind of look at it just to keep us moving forward. So I put this here because it's good to know where you're at to help gauge your own system of creating a process. So a key element, again, we need to measure success. So I created a little equation for us. Feel free to take a screenshot if you'd like of this. Small goals, we just want, now, again, we're going to pretend we are launching a 10 episode season just for the sake of this. This is the time period we're choosing. So within that, we're going to choose just 2 to 5 goals to focus on during that time. And we're going to decide what our action steps and the ways we're going to execute those small goals that we're going to try. And then the time period to test those actions, again, 10 weeks. That's all going to equal your measure of wins and misses. So we're going to do all of these things for that amount of time. We've committed to it, and we're going to try it, and then we're going to see how it goes. And that's going to determine how we look at wins and misses. So here's some examples. We are, again, time frame is 10 weeks. We are in the launch phase, meaning we're about to launch, and boom, these are our small goals. We want to get really good at mastering the sound quality. We want to test and tweak the format as we go along so that we're not, we have a format, we want to try it out, but as we make discoveries, we can make tiny adjustments. Let's say we want reviews on Apple Podcasts, and we want to be consistent. So this one is really important, the consistency. Again, you've got to release once a week in order to actually test all the things you're hoping to test, and to look at it and have it be based in reality, not as soon as you skip a couple of weeks, it throws off the test. Then you can only measure for the 5 weeks or whatever it was that was consistent. It's good to think about it that way. Then I want you to consider, as you go along, the bonus goals. These are things that you didn't plan for, just like in life. I just had a dog push through the door of this office. The door was closed and locked, but it was ajar by a tiny little bit. She just pushed her way through because she wanted to hang out with me. Ran under my desk. I could not have predicted that. That's the last thing I would have thought would have happened in terms of what would have gone wrong during this. It's hilarious, but that happened. So these are the things that happen that you cannot predict, right? Like the misses too, but let's focus on the successes first. So what are things that are going well that you didn't anticipate? Here's one that's very common. You suddenly become more confident on the mic. And it's not sudden, it's usually gradual. Over time, you really get better at this. And you start to see how you show up differently in your life, even. More natural and organic questions. Maybe you get better at writing better questions, better scripts and outlines. Where are your wins? I want you guys to be like looking at these things, like, where are they? Like, I want to see them. But like I said earlier, about once you really understand how to look at your wins, then you have a better idea of how to measure the things that you aren't hitting, the things that aren't going just right. And if you notice any consistencies that you didn't plan for going wrong, or not wrong, but like they're just kind of missing the mark, just notice them. Same thing with your goals. If there's a goal on your list that you didn't hit, it's just a moment where you can go, I wonder why. I wonder why that's not working. And then you have to decide what to do with that. So because that's something where you can sink yourself again, like get over obsessed with the thing that's not working. Also very normal. I want you to try to think from a place of observation, meaning, again, I wonder why that's not working out. I wonder why we're missing that. Maybe you already know the answer, but if you don't, pondering it helps us take a step back and not make it about us and about something that, like, oh my God, a reflection on who I am. It's just, oh, okay, that's not working. What do I do about it? So move to the action part. Is it too early to put that goal on your list? Sometimes we put goals down that we're like, this is just the wrong stage for that. That's why I put the stages up there. And sometimes you don't know that until you try and start the process. So do we remove the goal for a while and revisit this later? Or are we putting it on the next set of 10 that we're going to measure and produce and do all the things? And do we focus on it more? And that because we've nailed all of the other things. So like, think about it that way. So the big reveal, I promised you that I would reveal to you what success is. It's a feeling. Success is a feeling. You get to decide what success is for you, and you get to decide whether you have it or not. That's why I told you that story in the beginning. Client number one had successes from my perspective, but didn't feel any of them and didn't buy into any of them. And they really affected her process, and it still does to this day. So it's important to buy in to what success is for you. Now, I want to talk about this for just a moment because it feels esoteric sometimes when we say things like that. The things you can control, your actions and your choices, like the formula I gave you, your expectations, how you create expectations. That's why it's good to have a goal list, because sometimes we expect way too much. And when we don't meet those, we get really down about it. But if you have a goal list that's realistic, that's where your expectations are set. Your knowledge, you can always learn more. Your perspective, you have control over how you see the world. And your feelings. Feelings are not the same as emotions. Your emotions have to happen. You have to process things you experience in life. That's what emotions are. They come in, they come out. Your feelings are how you feel about that. You can feel like you don't want to do that, which is a lot of us. Or you can allow space for that and you can feel uncomfortable, but okay with it, right? You can feel successful, but there's a difference with getting emotional around not having success or whatever you attached around that, right? So I just want to point that out. Feelings and emotions are a little bit different. Things you cannot control, time and space, timing, right? We can't control that stuff. other people's actions, choices, and feelings. We don't get to control anybody else. And that includes the people listening to our shows. We don't get to control whether they like it or not. We can make adjustments and listen to them if we feel like it's a good match to do so. But we can't control what their experience with it is. Not completely, right? And the circumstances and external events, like a dog busting through the door to hang out under my desk. I couldn't control that. That happened though. And I have to just kind of like move on, right? Those are circumstances I can't control. So you get to choose. You are in the driver's seat of this experience. And if you don't enjoy it, then ask yourself why and see if there's adjustments you need to make and where you can do that, and or if there's a better way to execute your idea. You get to choose your experience. So quick recap: umbrella goals. It's good to know your whys and your hows for both you and your audience. Know where you're at and what stage you're in so that you can stay focused. You want to set small goals after that so that you can follow a measurement and a formula. And you want to know the action steps you decide to choose to try to execute those goals. Decide on your timeline, the time that you're going to test these actions and these goals. And you really want to be consistent for that amount of time. So you've made all of these decisions and now you're going to try it out and you have to be consistent. That's going to you're going to do yourself the best favor by being consistent. That's the part that a lot of us get wrong. Not wrong, but like that we struggle with because of life. Life gets in the way. But that consistency is where things start to change and you'll start to see the outcomes you're hoping for. And assess for success. You want to count your wins. Make space to see the wins from a realistic perspective as much as you can. And observe any growth to factor in that we didn't account for. Observe areas to shift action steps for the next time. And also allow yourself to see where things aren't going exactly the way you'd hoped so that you can, again, adjust. And rinse and repeat and keep going. You've got to keep going. You've got to just keep trying and seeing what works for you and what fits in. So again, success is a feeling. If there's anything you take away from this today, it's that you get to decide what the experience is that you want to have, that you are in control of that, and you get to choose if you're going to have a successful experience or not. And I have something for you. It's at successgoals.avanthousemedia.com. It's free. It's a way for you to go through. It's like a flow, an exercise to go through your whys and your goal setting. So some templates for you. They're free. It's just a few pages. And I wanted you to have that as a support for what we talked about today. So if you go to successgoals.avanthousemedia.com, you can get it there. And just keep going and allow yourself to have moments of success. If you keep going too, if you keep going consistently, success becomes inevitable. And that's just true. It's science. So back to you. I want to talk about our questions. I'm going to stop sharing and see if my screen comes back.
Yeah, we have a question here. This one's from Michael. So Michael says, in addition to using spreadsheets to keep track of various metrics, are there various organization tips and tools you'd recommend new or well-established podcasters use for greater success?
Okay, that's a big question. Let me read this again. Okay, spreadsheets, metrics. Spreadsheets are great. I have another guide that has a spreadsheet template in it for you. If you're a lover of spreadsheets, I can give you that as well. Are there various organizations, tips, and tools? So it depends. There's so many parts of the process to podcasting. If you're looking for organization around your guests, I think spreadsheets are great. If you're looking for tools to find guests, I think Podmatch, is it Podmatch? Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Fantastic. There are things like that. What else? There are a lot of apps. Like social media is a big part of marketing, right? So there's tons of apps that will help you organize your marketing scheme, right? You can. Here's just a tip. You can preload episodes, like batch your episodes. Let's say, if you want to organize your time and you've got 5. So you organize them all you've recorded them. They're all good to go. You send them to your person. I use Google Suite a lot. It's not the best because things can get glitchy there. But it's a great way to start if you need to share with a team. If you have a post-production team, for example, and you want to share assets, you can organize everything into folders, which I love. That has really simplified my workflow. Just folders of the show that you're working on with seasons, because I love seasons. It helps my organization once again. It's another reason to have seasons organization. What else? And then people can just like share into those folders, and you can load everything into your hosting platform ahead of time and then set your dates. And then let's say you do that in 2 weeks time for the next month, and then you're done, right? And then you can focus on marketing. So there's so many ways to approach a workflow. That's a big question. So I hope that helps you think about it in a way that Google is available to you now. Your hosting platform you have. If you need a team, of course, we can do that for you, but there's other ones out there. Sometimes having a VA, a virtual assistant, can help organize things like that, help create spreadsheets even. So I hope that helps.
All right. And we have another question here. There are 3 of us that started our show over a year ago. We have not missed, but how can we get our whys on the same page to keep us all on fire for our content?
Ooh, congratulations. First of all, that's amazing. I do suggest, so there's 3 of you, which can be difficult. I had a podcast once where we couldn't get on the same page. So I canned it because we weren't trying to do this. We weren't trying to accomplish the same thing. And that became a problem. So if you can, sometimes it's revealing and you realize you can't. And that's what happened to me. But if you can, try to get together. You can use the worksheet I gave you and have everyone, I've done this with businesses too. Everyone fills it out. You fill out the flow of what your whys are. And you come back together and you discuss them and you see if there are correlations where things overlap. Okay, if everyone's on a different page, then you kind of have to start. I'll start from 0, but start again and ask, okay, what do you love about this? And what is your why for doing this? And just a simple question. What's yours? What's your most important reason for showing up? What's the reason you show up? And that is just having an open conversation. But I like to do the first exercise first, where you kind of each do some writing, not a lot, just enough to identify on your own, each person on their own, so that you have a very honest answer, and then come together and share it, or even share it through documents and then have a conversation. But I do think communication ends up being really key around figuring that out. Do we have any others?
We do. Let's continue on here. Mark has a question. As an independent podcaster, how much control do you have over your intellectual property? Do you have any recommendations on how to protect your IP?
Well, if you haven't sold it to anyone, it's yours. You own that IP. You can always trademark your name. I suggest making sure you have the websites that, like the domains for the titles. You own your IP. Unless you option it to somebody else, as far as I know, I'm not a lawyer, but as far as I know, to my best understanding, you own your IP. If you're like looking up and you see other people that have like the same title you have and things like that, ways to go about that could be seeing if you've existed longer than they have. You might ask them to if it's cool that they don't produce any more shows under that title because you have the trademark. So getting a trademark can be really helpful for that kind of situation if you're worried about that. And you can always, there's a lawyer that comes on to talk at Podcast Movement a lot, Jared, and I'm forgetting her name, but she has an amazing podcast. And I'm wondering if that's a good resource for this type of question. She has a wonderful podcast and I can't remember what it is, but if you remember, Jared, I'd love for you to jump in and share that. But there's resources out there like that where you'll get a more defined legal answer. But yeah, trademark it if you can. Buy all the domains that are associated with your name, but your story is your story.
we have a few lawyers that speak at podcast
Yeah,
movements.
there's one woman I'm thinking of,
I
and
don't
I
want to give
can't
the
remember
wrong
her
one.
name.
Let's continue on with a couple more questions. We have one from Judy. Is there a market for unusual content? I
Of
guess
course.
Judy feels she has unusual content. So
Thanks, Judy. Yeah, I don't see why not. I think it's kind of like the niche point I was making about one of my clients. A lot of people feel their content's a little unusual. I can't share with you what it is, so I don't want to put them on blast because they are still producing, and I love them, by the way. I just wish they would buy into the how well they're doing. So they're kind of strange. They if Here's one way to look at it. Two ways. One, if you're really passionate about it, and you might know one or two people in your life that love your unusual content or love you, right? Like they're people you talk with about this type of stuff. If that's your first audience, right? Like you are your first audience usually. So if you find it interesting, chances are somebody else probably does. And then the second thing is to just look to see if there's any Facebook groups similar to what you want to talk about, or that's a great way to look, great place to look just because there's so many groups out there. Um, you can search other podcasts, just do a little research and see if anyone has any intersections around the things that you want to discuss or share. And I think you might be surprised. And worst case scenario is you do a couple of episodes and do some postings wherever you are on social media and see what people think. It's a great way to just ask people if they like it.
okay. Let's see here. We have Judy mentioned that it's entertainment, so that's I guess
That
helpful.
sounds great.
Yeah. So a lot of people are appreciative of you, Christina, as they should be. So we're having all kinds of messages like "thank you,"
Yay.
"thanks." You're no stranger to people appreciating your work. So,
Always is
um,
wonderful to hear. So thanks for sharing that part too.
and then we even had a question about there's even another thank you here. But there was is there a follow up session? I don't know. Maybe we can persuade Christina to come on back at some point, and maybe
Yeah.
we can do some more follow up.
Can I ask a back question? Like, what would
Yeah.
you want out of that? What do you feel you need next? Because we can think about that. If you're still here, who asked that question, Dinkar, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. What would you want as a follow up? And then we can talk about it. We can try to figure something out.
That sounds great. Now, it's possible people want to check out some of your work or maybe even contact you. I know that you shared the link earlier, the Success Goals website, which I put in the chat. Is there any other way that you would like for people to maybe connect with you online, Christina?
Yeah, you're welcome to. I'm very responsive on Instagram, and my handle there is at the Barsi, so my last name. And I will answer your DMs if you want to reach out to me there directly. That's where I post like my links and my all the stuff for both for the podcast and the people I work with, things that I do. If you get that what did I name it this time? Success goals. I have a few of these. If you download that, then you go straight to my email list. And if you don't want to be on it, just unsubscribe and get your freebie. That's totally fine. But if you want all the information, I'm there as well. And then you can email me directly because it'll come back to me if you respond to any of my emails.
What was the Instagram again? I want to make sure that I put that in the chat.
Yes, at the Barsi.
At the Barsi. Okay, I'm going to put that in there. And then, of course, we have a question from John. What kind of advertisers would you target with a 200 to 300 listeners per episode tech-related show? Some of our companies want podcasts with listeners that have more listeners. So
yeah, I know Podcorn does some stuff where you can go and I believe it's like a public listing, meaning like you can go and put your show there and the advertisers are there and then matches can happen regardless of show size, regardless of listener size. But it's true that the brands and agencies are looking for something more closer to the thousands, but that doesn't mean you can't find your own opportunities. So what a lot of people do in the beginning is you can approach your own market and have a conversation. Maybe there's people that you already are connected to in LinkedIn, for example, who you feel would be a good affiliate that you're happy to talk about their product or brand or service. And it would be a good fit, and you could create your own deal. I've done this with a handful of my clients because everyone starts from zero with me usually, not always, but a lot of my development clients do, right? Because they're developing. We suggest this where you either find someone local who you have a relationship with, maybe somewhere you shop all the time. We're all online now, so that's easier. Maybe that's easier. And just approach them and ask them if, I'm doing this thing. I will talk about your product in this many episodes. Just explain it to them of how it could work. And you can come up with your own price points. We have client number 2 in my explanation does this, and they now have two brands they work with that they just did a handoff deal, like I just explained, and they signed on for the whole next year. So it's going really well for them because they are enjoying it's fun for the brand because they've never advertised in podcasting before. So there's ways to do it. Two other ways. One, affiliate links. If you are an affiliate of anything, you can promote the affiliate link and then you can get some money that way. Just sign up for affiliates that make sense for you. There's a bunch of tech ones, especially if you go through Amazon, do an Amazon affiliate. And then you can talk about those brands and just say, click the link in the show notes. And then you can make money that way. And I forgot my other idea, so we'll just move on. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, here's another question. So we have a food-related show. They've had trouble getting guests, and they're wondering if you have any tips.
So I mentioned Podmatch. That they are an amazing connector, and I really like their system. And I have an affiliate link, but I'm not really affiliated. If you want that, I can give it to you, but you can just go to podmatch.com. His name's Alex. He's amazing. He's in this community too, actually. And he's presented here, and he's a great guy, the founder. It's a wonderful way to have really aligned guests. I started using it more actively, and I've found amazing guests for the season I'm working on in my show right now with Be Bold Begin. And I was nervous about it because I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to find the right aligned guest because sometimes I think what I talk about is too mindfully or whatever all that stuff is. And I worry that it's just going to be authors wanting to sell their books or all of this. It's not true. My numbers have gone up because these are really great interviews with really awesome people. So that's a great resource. Try that. And then let's see, trouble finding guests on other shows. Food-related show space. I'm in trouble trying to find guests on other shows. So maybe I don't understand this question. I may have answered it wrong. But if you're looking for guests, try Podmatch. But you're trying to guest on other shows. This works that way too. You can guest on other shows this way as well. So it works both ways. Sorry, Jared. I just figured it out.
No, me too. You're right.
I would try that first. And then also I would just try looking through the shows that you feel have your audience, the people that you would like to be your audience, where there's some alignment there, and just reach out to them. There's usually emails associated with people. There is emails associated with people's podcasts. That's how it works. You have to put your email down when you launch your podcast. So if you can find those, that's a nice way to just be like, hey, I feel like we're a great fit. Maybe you bring them on your show if it makes sense and do a trade. That's something I would try, and just make alliances. It's a nice way to build your community too, when we create, ways to just connect. And then see, LinkedIn could be a good source for that too. And just look up people in that space.
Wonderful. So he basically said, I'm trying to guest on other shows. So
thanks, Joel. Sorry, I misunderstood.
I misunderstood it as well. But I think that's a good start. And just reaching out to other podcasters that are in the same space and seeing if you can collaborate. That's a good way. We have another question. This is from Mark. Given a scenario where you have a podcast pilot ready on paper, what do you consider a realistic timeline to going live with a podcast?
Love it. Congratulations for writing your pilot. That's awesome. It depends on your process. So I make people for their first season. I make them. They commit with me to record all of their first season. Again, for me, that's 10 episodes, but it doesn't have to be. When I first started my company, I had people do 4, but I realized we easily got behind with that because it's deceiving. We think, oh, we've got a whole month's worth of weekly episodes, and then you don't create anymore. And then you have a gap, and you don't want that. So I can't tell you exactly how much time it takes because it depends on how much you want to create. What I do suggest is decide how many you want to release in a batch so that you can make the consistency part easier on yourself. So record a few if you can. And I suggest more than 4. It doesn't have to be 10, but maybe somewhere between like 5 to 7 at least. Have those ready to go, meaning you've done it, you like it, that'll help you decide if you really like this process as well. And you've gotten some guests, whatever, or you're solo. Maybe you have you're a solo show or an audio drama. I don't know. But you've done some of that production so that when you go to launch your pilot, so let's say that's 7 weeks. So that's how it determines your schedule, right? You're like, okay, well, I have 1 day a week where I can do this. So now you have 7 weeks to plan ahead before you launch your pilot, your trailer, maybe your pilot or your trailer. I suggest doing a trailer first, actually. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. So think about it that way. It's think about where you want to be, and then walk backwards a little bit. And that determines, how much time do you have to really do this? What's it going to take to record? You need to put your team together. Is that what's in place? What's not? You need to really assess your resources and just game plan a little bit, right? Write a little outline of what your next 7 weeks are going to look like if you choose to do 7, and be like, cool. And then what happens after that? Do you want it to be every week with no gaps? Do you want to take a little break? Like, just think one step ahead of this first grouping of your show to help you understand what you want your ongoing process to look like.
Okay, and it looks like that's going to be all we have time for right now. Christina, thank you so much. And we've included all the links you've been sharing and everything in the chat, so I hope people will check those out. And we are always appreciative of you, Christina, being a wonderful member of this community and podcasting in general. So thank you for sharing today.
Thank you so much for having me on, and I appreciate all of the questions. And feel free to reach out to me. I love interacting and engaging. So thank you again for being here.
And the persistent rumor says, well done, Barsi. Thank you for your time and information. And I guess they're giving me some love too, which I don't know that I deserve. And fantastic info. Thank you, Christina. Yeah, so there's lots of love and right.
Yay! I love that. Thank you, everyone. I so appreciate that. And thanks, Jared.
My pleasure, and look forward to maybe having part 2.
Yes, yeah.
All right. Thanks again, Christina.
Thanks.
Bye.